Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Dr. Hawthorn here, and today I'm introducing to you a new series of Blender tutorial. Let's see what we have here. Commands with Dr. Hawthorn, Essential Modifiers and Tool Series. In this series, we will be talking about tools and modifiers, and we will have shorter video clips, and each clip will be talking about one specific tool or modifier. And today we will start with the very first one. In the modifier tab, we have many different options. And what are modifiers? Modifiers are, according to Google, are a group of powerful tools that allow you to influence the shape and deformation of 3D objects, typically by using other objects or control points. Modifiers are very handy because you can do more changes to a mesh that you already have without doing exactly a destructive modification. They can be altered, they can add the number of segments, they can add number of cuts, or to make it more rounded or more in terms of the shape. Or you can also create a small animation to just like blow up a pillow or to make a blanket. In this case, we can call it is reversible because it is just like a visual modification. However, you can also apply the modifier to just make it destructive. So in Blender, we can use these tricks to create a more complex or a more organic shape without really destroying the original mesh. Now, today we will be talking about the first one, and here we are in Blender. By default, of course, we have the cube, we have camera and the light, but the camera and the light are not useful in this case because we will be talking about the array modifier. An array modifier, as you can understand from its name, is like creating clones of objects or of meshes, as we call it in Blender, in the viewport. If we want to apply a modifier to the mesh we have here, which is a cube, we can go to the modifier property panel. By selecting this, we can just choose from the list, or if you remember the name by heart, you can just type on the keyboard array. So if you look through the list, we have added, generate, deform, normals, physics, and hair. Usually, and as a beginner, we will use generate. And generate, the very first one, we have already array. They are arranged alphabetically. And of course, array is starting with an A, which is the very first one, and is the very first one I want to introduce to you. When we click on array, you can see that the cube is no longer just a basic cube because it's longer. It looks longer, it looks like it's stretched, but actually it's like you're adding one more count of the ordinary cube to the viewport right next to the original one. To understand this more clearly, we have to recap again. In Blender, we have three axes. And the first one, we have the x-axis, which is the red one. If you don't remember very clearly, you can see on this little guy here, the horizontal axis is x, and it is red. And the one that is tangent to it is axis y, which is green. And the one that we cannot see on the viewport is axis z, which is the vertical one. For array, we have to rely on these axes to create basic array function. If you look at this list here on the right hand side, we have the fit type. By default, the most original, the simplest one is fixed count. And the count, we have 2, meaning that by default, we have only one cube, but if we turn on this modifier, we'll have 2 cubes. And this is according to the factor x, which is along the x-axis, which is the red axis, and it is 1, meaning that 1 that is unit the mass. After this mass, immediately we have the second count of the cube. If we are adding the number of counts to 3 to 4, like here, you can see that there is no gap in between. It looks longer, but Actually, we are adding one more same cube next to it along the x-axis. We can also alter this number. For example, if I reduce this to 0 and add 1 to the y factor, meaning that we are adding the 3 cubes, making in total we have 4 cubes lining up along the y-axis. If I'm inputting 1 here, as you can see, these cubes are added along the green axis. The same apply to z-axis. If I'm adding 1 here to the vector z, it's getting taller. But sometimes, and most of the time, we don't want to just add to it without leaving it a little gap, because we want to exaggerate the visualization of having them separated. If we are making a long cube, or we're stretching a cube, we can by simply alter or deform it by stretching the cube. We don't need an array modifier, right? In this case, we will add a small number behind the decimal. So probably we can start with 1.1, and you can see already the gap. You can already see the gap in between each cube, and you can do different alternation in this command. We can also add up to the array. For example, now I'm lining the cube up vertically. I can also lining the cube along the y-axis or along the x-axis by creating another array. In this case, I have 2 arrays. One is called array and the other one is called array 0.001, which is along the x-axis with factor 1. But I want to exaggerate the look, so I am going to change the number to 1.2, which you can see that we are now having 8 cubes. In this case, the array modifier, we can also do something like this. When we are modeling a very big scene, usually we will want to see everything, but sometimes some of the items you already create the model and actually they are not very useful if you are modeling parts elsewhere. When you are focusing your time on other parts, probably you want to just hide the modifier or you want to hide the item. 2 ways of doing that. The first one, if you want to just hide the item, you can go to this panel, the one that is above, just turn off the I button. Then the entire thing will be gone. But you want to remind yourself, let's say, if you want to remind yourself that this item is modeled, I just want to get rid of the modifier for now, I can do this. Shutting down the screen button here next to the modifier name, that is to leave only the genuine mesh here in the viewport without showing what is generated by the modifier in the viewport. Now, turning off this screen meaning that you can only hide that on the viewport. But you see that the camera button is still on. It means that if you are doing a render now, the render will have the 8 cubes in total. If you want to hide it for good, you want to hide it even from the rendering results, you have to also shut down the camera button. This is something to remember, first of all. And second of all, is that normal modifiers, they are non-destructive. Why? Because you can just cross out the modifier to remove what is generated by the modifier here. And you can also immediately use Command Z or Control Z if you're using a PC to redo the cancelling of the modifier. In this case, if we are selecting the cube and going into the edit mode, we can do whatever changes to the mesh as you please with the effect applied to the 2 modifier, meaning I'm doing transformation or if I'm deforming the original model, the original mesh, the same modification will apply to the 2 modifiers at the same time. Imagine that you want to have these 8 cubes in the scene, but only one that is deformed. This you have to do the application of the modifier. How do we do that? We'll have to go back to the object mode, you can only apply the modifier in object mode. First of all, you cannot apply the modifier in edit mode. Go back to object mode by tapping on the keyboard, and next to the cross button, you have a drop-down menu, or if you are having the list very down below, you can have the menu up. The first option is to apply. You can apply this modifier. This is the second modifier I have here. If I'm applying this modifier, or we have the hotkey, when your mouse is hover above this modifier, you have to do something like this. If you want to apply this modifier, you have to have the mouse hover above this modifier. If you want to apply the second modifier, the mouse cursor has to be above the second modifier. It depends on which one you want to apply first. If you are applying the second one, meaning that you have to put the mouse here and use Command A or Control A on PC, then you apply it. After you apply this modifier, it becomes destructive unless you are undoing the command right away. When you go to the edit mode again, now you can see I can do the modification of one side of the cubes or the other side of the cubes. They will never be the same anymore unless you are selecting the two vertices together at the same time and grabbing them at the same time. So now it can differentiate what is done on the left hand side and what is done on the right hand side. If you want to separate the 8 cubes, what you can do is to apply also under the object mode and apply this very first modifier. When it is applied, going back to the edit mode, now you can see that the 8 cubes, they are completely alternative. They are completely separated. When they are completely separated, you can do changes on one specific objects. And this is how we apply the modifier and what is good and bad with or without applying the modifier. This is the first modifier I want to introduce to you. It is called Array Modifier. And then next time we will come back to talk about another modifier. Stay tuned to know more. Bye!